The final whistle may have blown, but the memories will last forever. Yes, it may be the end of their sports career, but it's only the beginning of their journey. On the backside of every sunset is a sunrise. As you watch the sunset, can you be grateful for what was and excited for what will be? The last. It sounds so final, like it's the end. And we've been trained to dislike the end. Culturally, we have been conditioned to feel sadness at the end. Because it is sad. The end of a chapter. The end of an era. Those words came directly from our episode, The Last. So we, of all people, we know how sad it is when a period of our life ends. As we watch our kids becoming teens, growing into independent humans who need us less and less as they find themselves more and more, we know how scary and sad it can be to watch a chapter of our life end. And yet, we know it's not the end of the story. We know it's just the backside of that sunset, the sunrise, the beginning of a new journey. But when so much of our identity has been tied to our children for so long, we are finding ourselves in the position of a bit of an identity crisis. Who are we beyond mom? We've been recognized for 14 or 16 or 18 or 20 years as mom. Everything else has been secondary. We may have put other relationships on hold, hobbies on hold, careers on hold. We have been told what a good mom we are. We've been called super mom. Our sacrifices and our hard work have been noted. I mean, probably not by anyone in our house, but others see it. Our lives have been dictated by our kids. Our schedules, what time we go to bed, what time we wake up, what time we do things, our meals, what we're eating, where we're going, our activities, who we are. We have crafted our identities around what we are, mom, rather than who we are. When sports or activities end for our teens, they experience the same type of identity crisis. They may even need to be reminded that on the backside of every sunset, there is a sunrise. Yes, it may be the end of their sports career, but it's only the beginning of the journey. So be excited for what will be. Hey guys, it's Jen. This is another episode of Reframing Me. On last week's episode, we talk about how hard it is for us when our kids' years in sports or other activities come to an end. If you haven't already listened, definitely go back and listen to the episode Game Over. We had a great conversation about understanding this end and seeing it as an actual loss, which it is. Well, to continue journaling our personal football team's playoff progress, phew. The boys won their game on Friday night, so they continue on to round 3 of the playoffs this coming Friday. So while I am obviously super excited for them winning, y'all know that I am even happier that I can just kick that end of high school football can down the curb just a little bit farther. Well, I love how much of a response I have already gotten to this episode. To be honest, I think if nothing else, it makes me feel better to know that A, I am not the only one going through this right now, and B, I was happy to look at it through the framework of ambiguous loss like we did, because before I approached it that way, I hadn't seen it done. I mean, to be honest, if you were to actually look, like nearly no one even talks about this transition in life, period. There's like one article on a parenting teens blog that I've seen shared in multiple locations. I think it was from a few years back because I've seen it for a while. And the blog post was super sweet and lovely, but basically it said, you'll be sad. So, yep, check. as I go through these, hopefully, we're going to say hopefully next few weeks, it's going to take us a few weeks to get there. I will be holding my breath and waiting and wondering, yes, but I will also totally be comforted to reflect back on our conversation and to feel the support of a community of other moms who I know are feeling the same way. Funnily enough, on the day that I published the episode, the soccer team that I told y'all about that my son didn't make all of those years ago that ultimately led him to football. Well, the boys, they lost their soccer playoff game that day. I went through and there are a couple of boys still on the team that I knew who were seniors, and my heart just hurt for their moms because I knew how much they were just sitting there hoping, come on, just another one. I happened to then see an old friend whose son played on that team back at our game this week. And she was talking about just that. She said, how sad and surreal it was to just kind of have it all end. And, at the same time as our football game, the score was announced from another one. And I heard a friend's son lose their game. And again, I couldn't totally feel her loss from miles away, knowing the exact string of emotions that she was going through. And then my husband, he sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post of a girl he went to high school with and, probably hasn't seen in 30 years, talking about how hard her son's last soccer game was for her. And of course, he screenshots it for me and is like, look, it validates your podcast. It's like, yes, I swear. Are all husbands like this? Like, it doesn't matter whether it's a salad that I tell him to try or a TV show that I tell him about or feelings that I have. It's like he hears it from someone else and he thinks he's totally discovered something groundbreaking. It's like, I do know things. But I guess we'll save that one for another episode, right? Because I could go on forever about that. But he was right. It does, in fact, just continue to show how we are, in fact, a community of women who, despite not knowing each other, despite different life situations, we are a community of women experiencing the same things and feeling the same emotions. And we are all just trying to process them and figure out why we feel this way and what do we do now. And sitting in the stands at the game, I was with a good friend and her son actually graduated last year and now he's away at college. And she said, she's just like, I look around here and just wonder how I have actually already had a kid come and go through here. And now I'm here and he's not. It's such a weird feeling. And of course, I'm like, well, funnily enough, I can recommend a very good podcast to explain your ambiguous loss. I know, I am insufferable, right? I'm, of course, joking, but kind of not. Like, I do like to cite my sources, and I was my source. So, going back to my husband, if I ever say to him about why didn't you listen to my podcast? He's like, I live with your podcast. And well, he's not wrong. But as we mentioned briefly, we are not the only ones who will feel this end. Okay. Because obviously our kids will feel it even more than we do. Right. So read that. We haven't had a read that in a while, right? I love read that. Okay, but read that. Today, we're going to extend that initial conversation into life after sports or what comes next for our teen athletes. Like I told you last episode, my 3 teens are all athletes. So that is the perspective that I'm coming from, and that's how I will continue to refer to it. But it is the same, whether it's the dance team or band or theater or whatever activity has dominated your teen's life and their identity. So read that. Today, we're going to continue with the conversation about what life looks like for your teen after sports and how you can help them find their identities. It is mid-November right now, and spring football practices began the end of April. That was 8 months ago. And in the very brief off season, they were training for the season, making it a pretty much year-round sport. And that is only 1 year of it. That doesn't count all of the previous years. And for most of these teens, that's pretty much been the norm for them. I know that cheer and the band and the dance team, they went on all summer prepping for the fall too. And sports like basketball, wrestling, soccer, lacrosse, I know I'm missing some, are often, they're often year round with travel leagues. And then theater kids, well, they jump from one performance into the next. So these activities are super consuming of them. But not only are their sports a part of their everyday lives, but really their lives are often centered around their sport. I know that personally, having devoted so much of my time and energy to my career over the years, it's an ingrained part of my identity. And I have a very difficult time walking away from that and separating who I am outside of that career. As a mom, we all know how hard it is. I mean, geez, it's the reason that I'm doing this. And it's the reason that many of you are listening to this, because we know how hard it is to separate our identities from our role as a mom. For our athletes, it is just as hard to separate their identities from their activities when they have actually created their identity around that sport. Often everything about their lives, the times that they go to bed and wake up, what they do after school, what they eat, how they train, who their friends are, what their goals are, often everything that they have done for years on the daily has been centered around sports. So when it just ends, of course they are going to have a void. They're going to be lost. I know one of the boys from my son's team, who I don't happen to know very well, he walked me to my car after team dinner the other night to help me carry things. And he said to me, he's like, Miss Brubaker, I just don't know what I'm going to do after school. What will it be like to just come home after school? And I know that that's the feeling that my son has too. Like, what do I do now? And right now, they may look at it on the surface level, like my son and that boy do, like, what will I do after school if I don't have football practice? But they haven't really even thought through the actual reality of it, that it's more than just what they do and more than just what they do with their time. They often don't realize quite how much the sport consumed who they are too. Everyone around them has identified them as that sport. So when they're not doing that sport anymore, it can be a really hard thing to face. It can cause some of them to face an identity crisis. And they've been part of this team, a team that has been a close-knit group, trains together, hangs out together, who shares a common goal. I mean, chances are they all dress the same. I know that I often find their friends' clothes around and I'm never sure what belongs to whom because they're all wearing the same merch. And pretty much everything that they do is built around their shared goals and a very routine life. They're each going to feel some type of loss when they realize that they need to create a life and an identity without sports at its center. So let's continue this conversation to talk about what we as parents can expect once the clock counts down to 0 on that very last game. Number 1, okay? There may be a bit of a delayed response. Of course, they'll feel an immediate sense of loss if, in fact, they lost their last game. But once that passes, even for those who might be excited or feel a bit relieved that the season is over, oftentimes that excitement is pretty short-lived. When you've been in an all-consuming season for so long, it's a relief to see it end. But it's when the realization hits that, nope, it's not going to start back up again. That's when the struggle may start. So it is quite possible that for these fall athletes, it might not even hit them until next fall, like when the team starts playing without them. As an aside, be aware that this will also be a difficult time for us too. So the grief of their sport can be a bit ongoing. So be prepared for that. Number 2, they may feel a bit like they've gone from hero to zero. So think about all of the excitement and the recognition that they get from sports. It's just going to all go away. They've gotten really used to it. They've gotten used to us bragging about their accomplishments and their coaches giving them feedback daily and their teammates cheering them on. But all of this recognition, it's been for what they are doing and not who they are. So when the game ends for them, so do these accolades. Us parents, we have been raving about their successes. We've been posting on socials, coaches and teammates, and anyone else who is congratulating them on their successes. It can be really hard for them to have this source of recognition die. They will need us to kind of recognize more of the traits that they have developed through sports. So like in my house, we've been so heavily focused on his kicking and punting skills and how he's developing these particular skills, like his distance and hang time and accuracy, because he's been a punter. He's been a kicker. But those skills have come through having the other skills like hard work and dedication and attention to detail, focus, resilience, self-discipline. So it can be helpful for us to help them recognize those other skills and how they're applied to various areas of their life. Number 3, they may not be as responsible as you've grown accustomed to them being. So, think about it. Many of the choices that they have made have been controlled by the way that their sports life was structured and structured for them. For example, every summer of high school, my boys have had practice at like 7 a.m. That's so very early in the summer, right? But it is kind of nice because that means there are no late nights. When you've got to be dressed and on the field at 6:45 a.m., well, you got to get to bed. And it has been quite lovely to actually have a bedtime in the summer. And these regimented lives directed by their coaches and schedules, it really reduces the opportunities for them making poor choices that come along with negative consequences. So now, without those schedules that are being made for them, they're going to need to figure out what they should or shouldn't choose to do. And remember, much of this will also coincide with going away to college for many of them. So we need to encourage them to make good choices. And this is going to include things like sleeping and eating, exercise, free time. We can help them to take ownership of their new schedules. Now, a part of this schedule will be exercise. And really, interestingly, despite them being athletes for so long, one of the biggest challenges that these former athletes face is trying to figure out how to stay active. Seems crazy, right? It seems like these kids never stopped moving. But I guess I never really thought that all of the movement was for the end game of being an athlete, of playing the sport. When you take away that sport, you may also take away both their motivation for fitness and their opportunity. Now they'll have the opportunity that they haven't had before to kind of take ownership of what they actually want to do, like what makes their body feel good and what makes them happy movement-wise. But keep in mind, of course, that their bodies may also change when they stop playing the sport. The calories that they once burned without even realizing it, well, they're not burning those anymore. The muscles that they had that were so toned as a byproduct of the game, they may not be quite as toned as they once were. And yet in their minds, they're athletes and their body should look and feel a certain way as an athlete. So this might even lead to some body image issues for some. And so be prepared that that's a possibility. We can help them by encouraging them to take a workout class or join a gym, maybe even join a rec sports league. Maybe play intramurals in college. Doing any of these can not only be good for them physically, but also mentally. And yes, even socially, filling in a bit of that camaraderie of the team. Number 4, they may be bored. All right. They may seem directionless. Yes, they need time to decompress after the season ends, just like I need time to decompress, I know, after the semester ends. We can help them when they do ultimately feel directionless or bored. We can help them combat that a bit by encouraging them to learn a new skill or try something new, set new goals. What are they interested in? What other things do they enjoy? Trying new things is good for them, especially if they've been consumed with one thing for so very long. And setting new goals gives them something to strive for and a purpose. Number 5, as parents, most of us have tried to protect our kids from hurt and from sadness as much as humanly possible. I will definitely own probably erring on the protect from hurt side much more than not. I know I've always kind of felt like there is so much in life and in the world that I cannot do anything about, that if there is something that I can do to make their lives better or easier or nicer or protect them from a problem or whatever, then you know what? I'm going to, because all of those other sad or bad things, I can't fix those. Well, this is one of those sad things that I can't fix. A significant part of their life is ending, and they are experiencing a loss. And just like any other type of loss, it can manifest itself physically, socially, emotionally. And so we just need to be aware of just how big of a change this is for them. And we need to give them the space to feel it all. So encourage them to share their feelings and be vulnerable about it. Now is not the time to teach them, oh, well, things end, suck it up, that's life. Just no, just don't say anything if that's the only option. As I tell you, literally every episode in some way, just communicate. Let them know that you are there for them and that what they are feeling is totally normal. And I know how much it hurts our mama hearts to see them hurt, but at least it can make us feel better to think about how much resilience that sports has actually taught them. And this is the same resilience that will get them through this loss too. Yes, our teens will experience grief and loss throughout life, unfortunately. The thing that makes this one hard is that athletes are typically very unprepared. No one prepares them for how hard it's going to be to stop doing what they love and stop seeing themselves through the framework of the sport. I know it's totally shocking to think that these coaches aren't preparing them for the emotional struggles that they'll encounter, right? That makes me laugh. I mean, I totally look at these coaches and think, yeah, they're going to teach these kids how to process their emotions. Totally. Sorry, I know my sarcasm there might have been a bit over the top on that one, but I mean, really, think about all of the hours that goes into training them to play their positions, to learn a skill, to learn the game, and yet no one ever talks to them about how they're going to feel when suddenly it's just over. So really, it's not shocking why they might feel pretty lost. At the center of it all is that we need to help them realize how much more there is to them. It's okay to grieve, and they are definitely not alone in doing so. but there's much more to them and there's much more out there. This is only where their journey begins. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to follow the show so that you don't miss out on any new content. And please share it with your friends who you think might also benefit from or enjoy the content. That's how we're going to grow our community. And I really would love to keep growing it. Reach out to me on socials, on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me. And on Facebook, it's Reframing Me, and join the Facebook group Reframing Me, the podcast community, to connect with other women who are also raising teens and rediscovering themselves. Until next time, be well and communicate.